When looking to buy a commercial investment property, what you should look for when looking at the lease, there are a few key things that make sure that you're not being fooled, especially when you look at the rental figure. The most important thing my savvy clients look at when they're looking to buy a commercial property is the rental return, but also the rental rate per square meter for that shop, for that office, for that industrial use, for that industrial factory. Why? It's because as much as we love a long-standing tenant in a property, they may have moved in 15, 20 years ago with fixed increases per year. And when you're buying a property on a yield, you need to make sure that that rental rate per square meter is in line with today's market, not necessarily just that lease. What I mean is you may have there may be a news agency. They've been in there for 20 years. They're now paying $100,000 a year rent for a shop that is 100 square meters. But when they started 20 years ago, it was say 50,000. So it's doubled over the time, which is quite common. But if that shop was to come empty, it may only be in the marketplace at 60,000 a year, which is a 40% decrease. So if you're buying a property on a yield on 100,000, let's say at 5%, that would be a $2 million purchase. But if it was an empty shop at the same size, getting today's market, it would be 60,000, which would then be a $1.2 million purchase price at the same yield. So you're almost paying $800,000 too much for that property. So the key thing is to look at is the rental return. Now, what to look for and what can you do about this just to make sure that you're buying something at today's market value. One is the length of the lease. You're really vulnerable if the property that you're looking to buy only has 1, 2, or 3 years left on the lease, and that's where you can really take today's market value as the Bible, basically. That's what it is. If it's a bank in there and it's 10 years or 15 years, you can look at it a little bit less thoroughly, but you still need to do the basics. Because if you're buying a property on a 5% return, every $10,000 either too much or too little on the rent is worth about $200,000. So what I would recommend, you can contact a valuer. So let's just say you're looking at a shop to buy, it's got the news agency tenant, it's got a $100,000 lease in place. I would engage a valuer to do a value rental assessment on that shop, and let's see where that comes back with. Because what I said before was, if you're buying at 5% return, every $10,000 a year equals 200 grand. If you're spending $2,000 on a valuer to make sure that the rental's in line, this could potentially save you 200, 400, up to $1 million on the purchase price. Because it may not hurt you in the first couple of years, but let's say the news agency moves out, it only had 2 years left on the lease, and when you put it back on the market, you can only achieve 60,000. So by investing that 2 grand, you're saving 40% on the purchase price. What else you can do is speak to the competitive agents. I'm sure they'll tell you probably the lower end of it, which is a good baseline. So you can see where the current rent is and the other agents in the area opinion on rental assessment. Also, something to watch out for if it is a brand new lease, and also the term of the lease. As I said, if 10 grand equals 200,000, I've seen in the past on some leases with a landlord has gone to the tenant, I'll give you 6 months free rent, or I'll give you a 20 grand cash incentive, but instead of having $100,000 rental per annum, it will be 110, because they're really trying to sell it on a yield at that higher price. So in my experience, a lot of my best clients, these are the types of questions they're asking me and the evidence they're looking to provide. So whenever we bring a property to market, we will break it down saying, this is the shop, it's at 800 per square meter. Here are 3 recent rental deals, all at that rate. So you can be assured if it does come empty or unfortunately the business goes under, you're able to re-rent that property at that rent. Because previously in commercial, I've had 2 of the same properties, one sell for double the price because of the tenant. a lot of commercial has its value is the type of tenancy and the rent they're paying. So 200 square meter shops, one generating 50 grand a year, one generating 100 grand can generally be worth double. So you don't want to be stuck at the raw end where you've bought a property at a percentage, it's come back on the market and you're now renting it for half, because then that could open you up to the banks looking at the value of the property, recalling the loan, because you've almost basically devalued the property by half. So don't be fooled. Really check. Don't be fooled about a commercial lease. Look into it. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, because you don't want to be stuck at the end when the tenant moves out, re-renting the property for half. But also, in a positive note, it can work the other way as well. There can be a shop that is rented, let's just say for 50,000, that was an old lease, or you had a landlord that wasn't too aggressive with the rental increases. They may have known the tenant, it's been in the family for a long time, there wasn't much financial pressure, they were a good tenant, they paid rent, and they never increased the rent. So that was potentially what it would be if it came on the market now at half. So that's also, you can use this advice when for both sides of buying something that's been inflated or buy something that's undervalued. If you can find a shop buying it on a 5% yield, which should be getting double the rental return, you can effectively double your rent. I've had buildings in the past where one was in West Street. We sold it vacant for 2.4 million. We rented it for 150,000 a year, and then we resold it 6 months later for $2.9 million. So that basically went up in value by $500,000 based on the tenancy. There was no building improvements, there was nothing that changed. It was all the value of the lease. So that's the best thing I love about commercial property, where you can, instead of waiting for the market to grow or third-party influences to increase the value of your property, by having a great leasing agent, finding a great tenant and putting a great tenant in a property, you can effectively increase the value of your property 10, 20, 50, 100%. But you don't want to get caught out. I'm always here to help review leases, review deals. I share a lot of information with valuers. So if you're looking at a property and you want the non-biased opinion of the selling agent, feel free to contact me anytime. Thank you.